there was many debates of who was the big three in hip hop for maybe the past 5 years, right? Because people were talking about Playboy Cardi, Future, maybe even Tyler being in the big three. But let's not get this confused. The term the big three was coined for Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole. The three most dominant rappers of the 2010s decade when it came to influence, when it came to sales, and when it came to also rapping ability and the output of their catalog. So now that we're in the 2020s, we've seen a lot from them. We went through a huge year in 2024, and since the events that transpired in 2024, they have been super active. We got a new studio album from Kendrick Lamar. He performed at the Super Bowl. He got a bunch of awards at the Grammys. Then after that, you get Drake. He drops a new studio album with Party Next Door that's more R&B love-centric, and now we're getting these new songs from J. Cole. So in today's episode, Lou and I wanted to have the conversation, what is the fate of the big three? Because when you look at the trajectory of their careers, it looked a lot different at the start of 2024. A lot transpired. So in today's episode, we're going to be answering all the questions. Lou and I are going to be going back and forth on our takes. And guys, let us know. What do you think about this conversation in the comment section below? I'll leave the floor to you.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting about this conversation is going through each rapper and what the trajectory could look like. So let's kick things off with Drake. And the first topic that I want to tackle is the conversation about Drake being the most dominant rapper in the world, just because he's held that title for the better part of over 10 years at this point. And a big question is he going to keep his spot as the number one most popular and highest selling rapper? And there were a lot of conversations, especially swirling around the release of some Sexy Songs for You, what the first week numbers were going to be, if it was going to be a flop, if it was going to be the signal of a potential downfall. But those first week numbers did come in, and it actually sold pretty well. It did 250,000 copies first week.
I was on the money with it.
Yeah, you were dead on. And 30,000 of those copies actually came from physical copies because they put up the digital albums for purchase, and that definitely boosted it. So I think that was a W for Drake. Obviously, it's one of his lowest first week numbers, but again, it's a collaboration with Party Next Door. It's more R&B focused. That was kind of a given. So I want to make that very clear that Drake is not a corpse. I think that he's going to be a successful and dominant rapper for as long as he wants to be, for as long as he's putting out music at a consistent rate. But that being said, so much of his identity has been tied to him being number one. And we've seen that through a lot of his subject matter, right? Like numbers-wise, you're not fucking creeping up. So let me ask you this. Do you think that Drake, for as long as he's going to be in the game, let's say another decade or so, just to say, do you think that he can accept not being that guy? Because the idea of him not being outperformed commercially from, say, a Travis Scott or a Kendrick or even a newcomer in the future, I find that to be unlikely.
Oh, I don't know, Lou. Okay, for example, hip-hop has been on an incline since 2024, went back into dominance. And what's interesting is that even when it wasn't in dominance, Drake was still the most streamed rapper in the world in 2023, and that was the same case in 2024, and it was like that almost every single month of 2024. So in my humble opinion, just looking at even what transpired up to this date, it's impossible. It's impossible to say that this guy's not going to go on another tandem. First of all, he still has a new studio album to release that solo-wise. I think that's doing easy over $4 billion. If For All the Dogs in 2023, when the climate was low on hip-hop, was doing over $4 billion, especially with everything that happened, I think it's doing more than that. I think his name is super hot right now. And then if that happens this year or next year, now you're inching in towards the end of the decade. So it's like, how drastic could the fall off possibly be at this point? So for example, like you were talking about Travis Scott and the way that he was impacting, let's say, the charts, of course, with the bundles, like he spammed the bundles on DBR. It was the highest selling hip hop record first week for 2024, which was a re-release, which is absolutely crazy. So yes, I think like there are going to be other rappers, but also with the streams, it's like the back catalog is what supports a lot of those streams as well. So for me, it's like people are still revisiting the old Drake catalog. People are still in tune with the new music. He's still selling out tours. I just can't see it happening, Lou. I don't know how you could say it's unlikely.
Well, because what I'm saying is that like we're seeing it right now for the time being. We'll see how Travis's next album does. We'll see how Drake's solo next album does. But that being said, technically, as of right now, in terms of the last couple of years, Travis Scott is outperforming him album wise in terms of, like, let's say comparing Utopia to For All the Dogs. Also, Kendrick currently is making more hit records than a Drake is. So all I'm saying is that there is a real possibility that maybe he's number 2 in terms of commercial dominance and not number 1. And what I'm trying to say is that for so long, his identity and his like driving motivation to make music has been to, you know, maintain that top spot. So for me, it's like, I feel like he's gonna have to do some soul searching and find a new source of motivation to keep putting out music, to keep putting out new quality records, because I feel like when you're looking at Drake's most recent let me finish. When you're looking at Drake's most recent solo efforts, the whole 20-song Drake Buffet album, that's being done, in my opinion, because Drake knows that the more songs he puts out, the more streams he gains, and he knows that making a certain type of record, like an I Don't Give a Fuck with Yeet, is gonna fucking kill it. So what I'm saying is that I feel like to get the best version of Drake, maybe he needs that wake-up call of like, you know what, I can still coexist with other people in this game, even if I'm not the number 1 guy. That's what I'm trying to say, and I think that that would be for the better. So all I'm saying is that I think you're coming from a place where you're kind of living in La La Land, thinking that if Drake does stay in the game for another 10 years, that there'll be no one that tops him commercially.
You said by the end of the decade. 10 years is also, it's a bit of a jump. You know, you're almost doubling the time frame. He's going to be also...
So let's keep it 5 years then. Let's still keep it the 5 years.
Yeah, how am I living in La La Land if the statistics prove otherwise? For the past 2 years, still the most streamed artist. All of his albums are selling super well. He's doing his thing commercial-wise. I think there's very few people in the genre that could even touch him. The only way Travis Scott ever gets him statistically is with first-week numbers, and then it is it. And then it ends there.
Well, look at the number 1 hits, right? Like 4x4 went number 1. Obviously, it had a huge, like, downward spiral after that. But I just feel like it's a realistic world to live in to imagine that Travis Scott becomes the bigger rapper, right? Like, we're even seeing Travis Scott perform at stadiums, which is something that we haven't seen Drake do. So what I'm saying is this. It could very well be that Drake maintains the top of the throne in terms of who's the most popular and who's selling the most, but there's a real possibility that other rappers creep up and maybe even surpass. But another conversation I want to have regarding Drake is one that is kind of on a lot of fans' minds. Will we get another classic album from Drake, right? Because as much as a lot of the fan base has enjoyed albums like Her Loss, even some people fucking with Honestly Nevermind, a lot of fans finding gold within Certified Lover Boy and For All the Dogs within certain pockets of those records, it still feels like it's been close to a decade since we've gotten an outright, you know, classic album from Drake, or one that's up there with his best.
Okay, so you don't count More Life, you don't count Scorpion, you don't count Dark Light demo tapes?
I don't think Scorpion is on that level. Same for More Life, more of a playlist
I still think they're
vibe.
quality records, though. I feel like those are Drake records.
They're good records, but
those are records that should be in Drake's catalog.
Sure.
You can make the argument that when you look at For All the Dogs and CLB, you know what? I'll even give the pass to CLB. I think it's a solid effort, whatever the case may be. Albums like For All the Dogs, like that should have never came out. Like, I don't think that album was properly put together. It felt rushed. Regardless of the classic conversation, I think, like, let's backtrack a bit. Putting out a classic means that, like, you have to put out an album that, I think he captures the airways, you know, regardless of whatever the fuck he puts out.
Yeah.
But, like, it has to be impactful to the hip-hop community as well. And it's just, like, what's the likeliness of that at this point in time? He has so many mouths to feed when it comes to his fan base. You have the pocket of fans that want catchy number 1 hits for their ringtones. Then you have the other fans that, you know, they want to be gigolos and they want to fuck to his music. And then you have the hip-hop nerds like you and I that want to put our glasses on. And I feel like if I'm Drake, I'm low-key stressed out because it's like anywhere and any direction that I go into, I'm low-key fucked. I'll give you an example.
But that's the problem, though.
Let me finish, though. Hold on. So if he goes into his Conductor Williams bag, right, with the whole creation, recreation sort of thing, you know, like the rhyme schemes, the predictable stuff, it's good music. But for him, like with Scary Hours EP3, didn't stream the best in comparison to his other records, but then again, that was a deluxe. Now, if you look at, let's say, even the R&B cuts, right, off of For All the Dogs and whatever the case may be, yeah, you have your outliers like a Virginia Beach, for example, but these are not doing the numbers that his previous R&B records were doing. Like, example, Passion Fruit, that's considered an R&B record. Something like a Jungle. Like, it doesn't have the impact, the feel, or even, like, the statistical pull to be able to do that. Then you look at the sort of, like, mega hits, right, album to album. For example, Way Too Sexy, I Don't Give a Fuck, right? Those records, they perform strong commercially, but they're not performing up to the standard of a One Dance. They're not performing up to the standard of a Nice for What, The God's Plan, or In My Feelings. They're not performing up to the standards of a Passion Fruit. They're not performing up to the standards of a Controlla. So I think, like, either way, like, he's low-key fucked. What do you want the guy to do? And I get it. You're going to have to commit to a certain point, but, like, he's bigger than that, you know?
But this goes back to what I'm saying is the fact that the reason why he feels the need to have to, like, please the entire crowd and to make a certain type of record and to make these albums that have 20 songs and that have, you know, buzzing features attached, like a Yeet, for instance, is because his main goal, again, from my point of view, I could be totally off. I don't know what's driving him at the end of the day. I'm not inside of his head. But from what I've been witnessing in terms of his output, it seems like his main driving factor when it comes to putting out these albums is to sell. And
well, no kidding.
But what I'm trying to say is that didn't feel like that when he was making Nothing Was the Same or a Take Care, or if you're reading this, it's too late. And going back to that, I feel like, bro, fuck the Lil Yachty influence, fuck the Ice Spice influence. You're Drake, bro. You have your own sound and you have your own amazing catalog to compete with. So what he needs to do, in my opinion, is bring the energy back, bro. Project your vocals like you were in a song like 0 to 100 again. Like, we don't need the conductor.
Yeah.
We don't need the conductor, slow, meditative rhymes. We don't need that shit, bro.
Or even something like Jimmy Cook's. That felt like an exhilarating record for him,
Yeah,
right?
that
it
was
dropped in
fun,
2022.
and that was a massive hit.
Yeah, or something like a Rich Flex, for
and
example.
it came back down to like the Memphis roots. Like, it felt organic for Drake to
Okay,
make.
but that's what I'm trying to say, though, is that all these things that you're complaining about when it comes to Drake's output recently, he's been doing since the beginning of his career, right? Like, he's been making those albums and those track lists that have that diversity that are going to please everyone. Example, at Take Care, right? Like, you have your Marvin's Rooms, and then you have your headlines. Like, it's meant to go elsewhere. But the thing is that it felt like all true to Drake, and it felt true to his vision. Same thing with even something like a Scorpion, for example, right? Like, the R&B cuts off of that album, they were pretty solid. And then you got your 8 out of 10s, you got your Sandra Roses. I feel like, my personal opinion, again, like you said, you don't know what's driving him. This is just coming from a fan's perspective. I don't know what's guiding him creatively, right? Because like you said, I've always been a fan when Drake puts on new people, but to do something like a Yeet, for example, like, I Don't Give a Fuck, bro, come on. Like, there's no way someone in that studio listened to that record like, that should be in Drake's catalog. No, like, you're talking about a legendary catalog.
Yeah.
Like, this is a legendary catalog full of incredible albums and classics and full of #1 hits, smashers, great song concepts, incredible, like, you know, writing throughout it. I know people are going to say, oh, he's a ghostwriter. Fuck off. I don't want to hear those conversations anymore. He's a great writer as well. So just to say, I just feel like he needs to hone in. Not only that, but I feel like looking at something, you know, like a Her Loss or even an Honestly Nevermind, I get it. The Benny X production, even for all the dogs I could bring into this conversation, the Benny X, the Gordos, like, they're cool. Like, don't get me wrong, these are good producers. I'm just saying, you know, Vinyls, Alan Ritter, you know, Coleman,
Boy Wonder,
you know,
Manish.
Getting Back 40. Like, and I understand, like, they do have contributions to these projects, but keep it within that, you know? Like, that's where you need to be. And I guess, like, you could say that we're trying to box him in and go back to his old sound, but at the same time, like, I have these complaints and I'm saying these things because it seems a bit directionless at the moment. So what do you do when you don't know where you're going? Go back home.
Literally, bro.
Go back home. You
Go
don't know
back
where you're
home.
going. You have no idea. Go back to the last destination you knew and do that right again, because it just feels like, again, the Ice Spice impersonation on SSS, you can't defend that.
No.
You know, the Spanish accent with Chino Pacas on Meet Your Padre, you can't explain that.
But you know what it is? It goes back to the idea of Drake, again, wanting to capture the entire totality of all the airwaves in the world, because hooking up collaboratively, with a Yeet, let's say, or a Sexy Red, that is Drake's aim, to stay current and relevant and with the times. And I think that, you know, he continued to do that on something like SSS for You. But that being said, just a random thought that I have, I'm not a huge fan of Honestly Nevermind, you know that, but I respect him so much for putting out that album, because it felt like
It was a breath of fresh air.
yeah, and it was a moment where he's like, well, fuck what everybody wants. Fuck pleasing the crowd. I am creatively inspired to make some dance music that has a couple of rap-centric songs, and I'm going to do what I want. Fuck everything else. I don't care about how well it does commercially. I don't care if, you know, some portions of my fan base won't love it. I'm going to do it because it's just, it's creative drive. I feel like that's what we're missing for these big studio albums. So I would love to see that. But going back to what you were saying about the producers, absolutely, bro. Like, I think that these guys have so much range stylistically when it comes to the drums they could bring in, the live instruments from Manish, and just the signature sound that they helped shape for Drake that gave you those classic timeless records.
And I guess every artist is gonna want to go out and experiment with their sound, right? Like we've seen Kanye do that, we've seen Kendrick do that now with Mustard, right? Like, but it has to feel right and it has to be good. You can't just do it for the sake of saying, "Fuck it, I want to put up the numbers and I want to do it." And the funny part is like these Drake records that are doing well, and he's had many of them in this decade. Like a lot of those have come out of the Boy Wonder camp. A lot of those have come from 40. So just to say, it's not like, oh, well, you got to go to Benny X. And Benny X is a fucking wonderful producer. I'm not saying that. It's just like, if the records that you're getting out of those sessions are I don't give a fuck, then I just don't know what to say. But let's go into this next conversation. This is interesting, all right? Because you and I have had the conversation with different friends about this, and it's like, what lies on this next album?
How pivotal is it?
How pivotal for it? Because if he comes out and he does underneath 300, people are going to be slandering him. People are going to bring up the Kendrick conversations. People are going to be just fucking roasting him. And I don't think that's fair. I think, like, fuck the first week sales, but he is the guy. He is the guy for the first week sales. So let me ask you this. You think it flops?
I don't think this album flops. I'd be very surprised if this album, the solo album, does less than 350,000 copies first week. I would really be shocked. And I think another interesting aspect of this upcoming album is that there's definitely pressure to make a smash hit record, right? We saw like a song like Nokia or Give Me a Hug do pretty decent on the charts or whatever the case is, and some people are saying that Drake was blackballed and the only reason why these songs didn't go number 1 or number 2 is because Spotify is trying to like hide the album or whatever the case may be. I don't want to get into the politics of all of that. All I'm saying is that I think that this album will give us that next Drake number 1 smash hit record, because it has been a minute since we've gotten one of those. A song like A God's Plan or a One Dance or a Passion Fruit, one that is undeniable and that's being played everywhere all at once. So I think that's what you're gonna get out of this album, but I also think it's gonna be another one of those Drake buffet albums where you're kind of just getting a taste of everything, for better or worse. But more than anything, personally, and I'm gonna ask you the same thing in terms of what you as a fan would want out of this, I just want a new chapter from Drake. Like I don't want this to feel like a Views or a Scorpion, where it's like sort of like the post beef album where he sort of like has these bitter emotions and a lot of like the song concepts are focused around
but if
it.
that's
like,
where he's at creatively, like that's hard to
if
escape,
that's where
right?
he's at, that's fine. But it sounds like that is where he's at, because speaking about what he said on stage in Australia, I'm going to quote him. He said, "Eventually, when the time is right, Drizzy Drake alone by himself is going to have a one-on-one talk to y'all. When the time is right, I'll be back with another album, a one-on-one conversation with y'all that you need to hear." So it seems like it's going to be Drake being very expressive, maybe sharing a lot of just personal thoughts that have been ruminating. So I do get the vibe that it's going to be, another post-beef feeling kind of album. And maybe it'll be good, because when you look at Views, that kind of inspired a more vicious Drake, which ended up coming out really good performance-wise. So there's pros and cons, but you as a fan, do you think that it's going to perform extremely well, and what do you want to hear out of it?
Well, what I want to hear is just like a focused record.
Yeah.
I feel like a fucking broken record saying this myself. Just something that feels focused, something that has like a lot of quality on it, right? Because it's hard for me to go to a 20-song Drake album and like only be able to pick out like 4 to 5 songs with it. Like I don't feel like that's the case with SSS. I have been enjoying the listen, and I do go back to it. I know you and I share very different opinions on that album, but at the same time, like, does SSS feel like a Scorpion? No. Does it feel like a More Life? No. Like, I don't think it's going to have that type of replay value. So for me, I feel like the replay value has to be there. I want to see him inspired again to create creatively. And like, if this whole thing that just happened pushes him to be in a better space competitively, to like up his music again and to be able to like create at a top dog position that I know that he could create at, I'm super down to hear it. But let's continue on with this. Let's go on to Kendrick Lamar, because Kendrick has been on an absolute tear. Kendrick is in some of the best form of his entire career when it comes to his output, and it doesn't seem like he's stopping anytime soon.
It definitely doesn't. So I think the first question that comes to mind for every Kendrick Lamar fan and any hip-hop fan is, what's next for Kendrick, right? Obviously, he's been going on one of the craziest, if not the craziest victory lap that we've ever seen in hip hop history. But that's going to continue, with the Grand National Tour, but more so musically, what's next, right? There's the whole idea that maybe his next move is going to be to return to more of a conceptual basis for his next album. Then there's the major rumor about this GNX Deluxe, right? Because you go to Squabble Up and he had the lyric double back like a deluxe. You also go to the Lefty Gunplay interview and he confirmed that Kendrick was working on a deluxe at the time. And what's also a big indicator that it feels like a deluxe is imminent is the fact that just the same way that you got a teaser for Squabble Up in the Not Like Us video, and that song came shortly after that video, the same thing is happening with this new song that has the current title of Bodies. Some people are calling it Tiramisu. But regardless, that's a song that was actually teased on the same day that GNX came out, and that visual teaser that you got that snippet, and he performed it at the Super Bowl. So that tells me that he's using the same strategy he used for Squabble Up, where he's sort of hyping up the song before it drops. And I think that the song will come out soon, whether that be as a Lucy or maybe on a deluxe. But let me ask you this. Given that this Grand National Tour is happening from April to August, to me, it feels like we're living in the GNX era, and we will be for the better part of this year. So could you really see a totally different studio album coming out?
I think it feels like an Entitled Unmastered. I think that's the direction he realistically goes with, right? He's always been someone that likes to release bodies of work after he drops an album. So it wasn't really a trend with Damn, and people had a bunch of speculation whether we would have got a Damn, let's say deluxe album. That didn't happen, obviously. Mr. Mom, the Big Steppers, that felt like a huge fucking album, so it just felt like it would have been excess. You already got a double album. But when it came to TPAB and when it came to GKMC, you did get deluxes to them, right? Untitled and Mastered was like the unofficial deluxe, where it was just all of the leftovers and Lucy's from those sessions. Incredible body of work, by the way. And I just think that if he replicates that same formula now, all of these songs are going straight to like number one. All of them. It's going to dominate once again. We saw what happened after the Super Bowl. It went crazy. He honestly, that Super Bowl performance like put him into a whole different level of stardom.
Bro, how is your album going number 2 on the Billboard 200 in its 14th week? Like, this guy has no reason to drop another album. Luther, months after release, is the number 1 song in America. He has no real reason to drop another album. I think the only reason that he does drop an album is just to like fulfill some artistic vision he has. But
I don't see him dropping anytime soon.
No, I think the most you get from Drake next is that deluxe album, or maybe the SZA collab album that was heavily rumored.
You said Drake.
I said Drake? Oh, my bad. Yeah, so no, I think that either the GNX Deluxe or the SZA collab album.
It's just like, why drop a conceptual piece live,
That's it. There's no reason.
Wait for the era to be gone. It's also like, are people really down for that from you at this time? Like, no.
Not right now.
I don't think so. And it's like, you have the Reincarnateds, you have the Glorias on there. Like, you have your concept records if you want to go back. I just think like maybe he wants to be in a looser space creatively too, where he could drop records like a 30 for 30, and they're not Mortal Man's, but they're gaining a ton of value for him. And I think that even for Kendrick, looking at where he goes with his next year or so, he has to finish up the GNX tour. That has to be a thing. So why are you going to release a new album when you're still wrapping up the tour for the album you just released in 2024? He low-key gave us a whole different like 6-pack within the battle. What's the point? There is no point. I would let this whole era just sort of die out. And even at that, I feel like you have Baby Keem that needs to drop. That's a huge topic of conversation. I get it. Kendrick went all the way to the top, but at the same time, Baby Keem needs to release music right now.
It's going to be a great time. It would be a fucking great time.
Baby Keem needs to release fucking music right now. So, and he mentioned this too. He wants to get into the executive bag. He wants to grow his own label. He wants to grow the business part of things. How are you going to do that? Build up your label. Who is the only other artist on your fucking label? It's Baby Keem. So are you going to take more attention away from the schedule? Because we know that probably pushed back his release date. Yeah. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
For him,
but something I want to talk about is like, do you see Kendrick beyond this post Super Bowl hype, do you see him continuing to dominate the charts? Going back to the conversation we were having about Drake, where it's like, well, Drake might not be the number one guy in 2027, 2028, etc. Could you see Kendrick continuing this dominance on the chart?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah,
Bro,
right?
he's been doing it for like, what, 15 years now? How long has it been since GKMC's been on the 200?
And that's the thing. Even looking at like a softer, more vulnerable album like Mr. Morale, even that had hits like N95 going
Put
crazy.
up over 300,000 first week.
So
Like, why?
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't see it ever stopping. I think it's like so many people have finally been like really exposed to Kendrick's music, because even when he was speaking at the Grammys, he said that the goal for him was always to be the biggest underground artist forever, right? And I think like he's kind of surpassed the underground, quote unquote, at this point, because now it's a whole different game plan, right? And it's a whole different type of influence. It feels like 2017 all over again for him.
yeah.
It really feels like 2017 all over for him again. So like to say that he's gonna completely just fuck off with his music and he's not gonna put anything out and then he's gonna dip in the charts and the relevancy, no way.
Especially with the momentum he has now, people are loving everything that he puts out, and
I
think
don't know
that,
about that. I like, because the thing is that
bro,
like I know a
the
lot
momentum's going a long way.
of the momentum
telling
is
you.
going a long way. I just feel like there's like a hate bandwagon that follows him.
There's
Everyone,
a hate bandwagon for Drake too.
Yeah,
Like
and
it's
for
just
Cole,
it's a
I get it.
huge
Yeah,
hip hop divide right now. Like
I understand. I've never seen it for Kendrick like in this light.
yeah,
And all the years
'cause
that I've
you
been
know why?
covering-
Because I mean he's been more or less unproblematic for a large portion of his career, right? Not really directly dissing anyone over the years. So obviously this is gonna change everything. But prediction that I want to make, I think he gets another number one hit record with SZA this year.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think they definitely spin the block again, whether it be on an album or just a Lucy. It's gonna
If
happen.
they were smart, they released that collab album together.
Yeah.
That would be stupid.
Yeah.
That would go absolutely incredible. Little final question, before we go on to J. Cole. I think when it's all said and done, you give him GOAT status.
Do we give him GOAT status? I mean,
I
listen,
think so.
I think he's on pace to become the greatest of all time. The only thing that's like holding me back from saying yes
Longevity.
right now is the longevity,
But even
it's the
longevity
influence.
there,
Like,
low-key. The longevity at this point is going to be 15 years he's doing this.
yeah, but
That's a big
But I
career.
do want to see like the influence on the future generations, and I want to see how timeless the music becomes. And he's already accomplishing that with Good Kid, Mad City, that's fucking been on the Billboard
think
200
about
chart
this, like-
forever.
like
so
we-
he's on pace in every box you want to check.
We
He's
were
there.
calling Kanye the GOAT in 2018, and he was 15 years into his career. We were like, look at 50s, like,
Do we call him the? I don't think I ever called Kanye the greatest of all time.
well, people considered him the greatest like
Okay.
hip hop artist of all time.
Okay, fair.
Like he had like a unanimous title of being one of the greatest to
Yes.
ever do it within the genre.
Yes.
I think,
But that's because like his influence was so like, it was so sudden, right? You saw it
Yeah.
take shape so soon.
But for example, like look at a career like 50 Cent, right? Like we consider 50 Cent to be an all-time great, and I'm not saying that he's on the same level as Kendrick, but like Kendrick wipes him in that regard, and like we still give 50 Cent the points that he deserves when it comes to the all-time rankings. He's been doing this for 15 years.
I know.
That is a long time.
I think the only thing that could stop it is if he drops like some dumpster fire like trash albums consecutively. Like if he drops like 4 back-to-back absolute
Stinkers.
pieces of trash, which he'll never do. But in that fantasy world that some people might want to live in, maybe then
We
he
said
gets.
the same thing about Kanye.
Yeah, I know.
The same conversations we're having about
you
Kanye.
never know. Listen, the point is you never know. I think it's too soon to give him the title, but he's on pace for sure.
Oh,
He's
for
on
sure, one of
pace.
the greatest runs in hip hop history.
Yeah.
But let's go on to J. Cole. So the fall off is on everyone's mind, especially with the release of Clouds. People are saying that this is one of the best songs in J. Cole's catalog when it comes to the 2020s decade. People feel like he's hitting this new strive in his career. People feel like they want to hear from Cole and they want to hear what he has to say, not only about 2024, but about his career, where he's at right now creatively on the fall off. What do you think? Do you think it comes out this year? Is that your play?
Well, I think that like it's really interesting because Cole's purpose seems to be shifting away from Drake and Kendrick's. I feel like with Kendrick, it's the idea of like balancing currently commercial success with quality music, whereas for Drake, it's about like, let me get number one hits. And J. Cole's in the other direction where it's like, I want to prove that I'm the best rapper rapping. And I think that that's where he's trying to distinguish himself from the other two and from any other rapper is like, I'm taking more of the purist standpoint and I want people to notice and recognize me for my pen game and for how skilled I am as a rapper. And he literally has a lyric on Port Antonio, where he raps. Hold on a second. Here we go. He raps. Here we go. Now, some will discredit me. Try wipe away my pedigree, but please find the guy out that's rapping this incredibly. That's some real hip-hop shit, bro. Like, he is trying to score points for the craft itself, and I think that that's going to be the purpose of the fall-off, and that's beautiful to me. Because, look, we were talking a lot about commercial success, and it's important to some fans, but I feel like for fans like you and I, we don't really give a fuck, bro. If you're really being honest, it's cool to marvel at, but it's like... I gotta
go into that album review, and I gotta judge the music.
That's it. That's what matters.
Whether you do 15K first week or 550, it doesn't necessarily matter to me, because at the end of the day, I'm looking for good music, and that's what's going to live within my rotation. When it comes to Cole and the Fall Off, I think that it needs to come out this year. I think it's a great time to do it. Drake just dropped SSS. GNX is doing its thing. Now it's time. You want to come in, you want to do it is time. And there was the whole conversation of like, could you ever look at this guy again as the greatest rapper that's currently spitting, the one that's in the best form? I can. I genuinely can. And I think what happened in 2024 stays there. That was a moment in time. And it's kind of like saying, Drake is, still on top because of what he did in 2015. Time is going to pass. The events of 2024 are going to slowly fade away. And then we're going to need new music from these guys. And then when you need new music from these guys, and there's more and more seasons that come through, well, we're going to see who drops the best body of work. And I think out of these three guys, when it comes to the Fall Off, when it comes to GNX, and when it comes to SSS or another, solo studio album from Drake, the best body of work that you're going to get is from J. Cole. On a production standpoint, on a rapping ability standpoint, on a song concept standpoint, I think it will be the best.
I think so. And going back to what you were saying about that conversation, I do think that a lot of people are never going to be able to give J. Cole that title of being the best rapper alive because he dropped a weak diss track against Kendrick and obviously backed out of the battle. But that being said, if he keeps knocking every single verse out of the park the way that he's been doing and drops a masterpiece of an album, what's going to stop me from hailing him the MVP of a certain year or saying that, yeah, right now, currently, he is rapping like he's the best rapper alive? Nothing. Nothing's going to stop me. Why should it?
Two on Clouds. You tell me how
so
you
let's
feel
talk
about
Clouds because we didn't do any content on it. No one really knows our take on it. So let's share some thoughts. What did you make of it, bro?
I love the production. I love the Wiz Khalifa influence. Apparently, Wiz has a verse that's going to be coming out on this song. That's still to be confirmed. We'll see what happens, but he does have a verse that was recorded too. And I just think it's a great direction for him. He's talking about getting his head in the clouds with his boys. He's on his like high for hours sort of vibe. And he's giving you Lucy's, and he's giving you shit that, keeps you entertained until the grander scheme of things. I love the wordplay throughout it, the Sandra Bullock wordplay that you, recently put out a piece on TikTok. I love that portion of it. I love the second verse because, again, it's him asserting his dominance. The bullet that missed Trump bar, hard as fuck.
Insane.
Crazy way to start off your verse. And I love how calm he sounds on this record as well. He sounds at home. He sounds patient. He sounds like he's creatively inspired. That's what I'm loving from Cole right now. And I think there's always going to be constant criticism around Cole because it's been there his entire career. People have felt like, oh, he's too boring. He's too this. He plays it safe. He plays that. No, like the problem is that like he makes it look simple. But when you really dive into what he's doing and when you really understand the intent and the creativity of J. Cole's artistry, it's really uncomparable. At this point in time, I feel like it's uncomparable. Yeah. And I think the only guy that's on par with him right now, rapping ability-wise, when it comes to these types of like song concepts and output, is still Kendrick.
For the mainstream, yeah.
And
in the mainstream.
Even the whole conversation of Freddie Gibbs. The whole conversation of Freddie Gibbs versus J. Cole, I'm sorry, guys. Stop fucking beating this dead horse.
J. Cole is dismantling the man. Freddie Gibbs is an exceptional lyricist. So is Joey Badass. So is all of these guys that are throwing these little jabs at Cole.
And Freddie Gibbs is knocking on that door hard.
Bro, you do not want to fucking poke that bear that is J. Cole in the sense that, again...
But he wouldn't even do it to you.
He probably wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying, if he would get into that ring, which who knows if he would or wouldn't, he would dismantle a Freddie Gibbs lyrically.
So where do you feel like everyone's getting blinded on this conversation? Because I'm seeing quote retweets of people saying like, Freddie's just dismantling Cole, and I'm
No way.
oh.
There's no fucking way.
Do you think
bro.
it's because they heard 7 Minute Drill and they saw that mishap that everyone's like, oh, it's over now?
I think it's just an easy opinion to have, just because J. Cole is now looked at as someone that
Opted out.
could be stepped on and there's no repercussion. So I think that a lot of rappers are maybe taking the approach of like, well, this song's going to get more attention if I diss Cole, and I might not, I might not see an answer, so what do I have to lose? But again, if J. Cole does get into that bag, because he could,
Like, I'm listening.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, just because he backed out of a battle once doesn't mean that he wouldn't ignite one with someone else on a lyrical, friendly vibe.
And
Who
I'm
knows?
even listening to these Joy records, and I'm listening to the Daylight records, and
No. Daylight. I don't know if you heard the LA Leakers freestyle.
It's cool.
No. He's different.
No, I know he's
Daylight
different.
is no. Daylight and J. Cole is a conversation that we're not gonna say it isn't.
No, I know, but I'm
We're
just
not gonna
saying,
say it isn't.
I don't know.
He's serious.
And
But
it's,
anyways,
it's tough here to like die on this hill, right? Where we think that Cole is still like a grandmaster, and if you poke that bear, I just think like he's too in his own thing right now to be fucked with. I don't think he'll ever lose concentration like that again, especially with what happened after 7 Minute Drill. And talking about that whole moment, the first person shooter diss from Kendrick on like that wasn't even towards him like that. Like, he was just caught in the crosshairs. And I think that there was just a lot of internet tension. I think that there was a lot of shit that was being cooked around the community, and maybe he felt like he had to answer, and that's what it was.
it was pressure at the end of the day. But I do want to speak about Clouds and give my take on that, just because
Yeah, go for it.
I really do believe that it's
By
one
the way,
of,
who produced Clouds?
you'd have to look into that. But I really do think that it's one of the best songs he's ever made. I really do think so. I think it's
Whoa.
yeah. I'm serious. I think it's
No kidding. It's DZL and Omen.
yeah.
And
I think it's a masterclass in delivery. I think it's a masterclass in terms of how seamlessly he is transitioning from flow to flow. And more than anything, I think what makes it one of the best songs he's ever put out to me is that elite balance between technical ability and conceptual focus from beginning to end of that song. He is totally on topic and rapping like a lunatic.
You
brother.
really think it's one of the best songs he's ever put out?
And I want to say this too. What's so exciting about being a J. Cole fan right now is the fact that he keeps getting better and better, and it seems like there is no ceiling for him in terms of where his skills
I've never
are
heard the sound
going.
from him. Well, kind of. I mean, like Folger's
No,
Crystals.
this is elite, bro. This is better than Folger's Crystals.
It's better than Folger's Crystals. Is it
Better than a lot
High-
of songs.
Is it better than High for Hours?
For sure.
I'm not sure.
Easy.
I don't know if it's better than High for Hours. I'm not sure if
Production wise, you can make the argument, but rapping wise, easily.
I don't know, because it's different. It's a different approach. Anyways, looking at Clouds, I think it's going to be remembered as one of like those J. Cole singles that really takes over. Like, I look at this as a Middle Child. I look at this as a False Prophets. I look at it as one of those singles where it's undeniable. But let's have the whole retirement conversation, because that was something that you and I were talking about the other day. And we're both on the take that he's probably going to take some time off from music after the fallout, but I don't think anyone truly retires. Like, what is the definition of retirement, right? Like, is Andre 3K technically retired because he continues to drop guest verses and he continues to drop instrumental albums with fucking flutes, right? Like, I don't know. Is Lauryn Hill truly retired?
That's the thing. It's like
I don't know.
People are acting like J. Cole, when he retires, is gonna fucking move to like a hidden mountain, grow the biggest beard of all time, and never show his face again.
And, yeah.
Like, that's how people are viewing it. But in reality, this guy's gonna pop out on features. I think that, really what his focus is gonna be is to go into like, to follow the path of Jay-Z and go into like that executive mogul vibe where he's really further developing the talent at Dreamville and pursuing other business ventures. I feel like that's probably what's going to be the main focus for him. And more than that, I think that in terms of, are you going to get more albums after the fall off? Like we've been saying, you'll probably get a long break, because I do think Cole wants this to feel like an epic finale that he's been working on, a project where he could like leave everything on the table and be happy with his legacy as a rapper. But who's to say he can't come back after 5 years and give us a piano instrumental album, or just fuck around and do something creative? You know what I mean? I think that's always open, but I just don't think he's going to be on the chase the way that he's been his entire career, whether it be for accumulating more fans, for being hailed the best rapper ever. I think the chase part of it is probably going to be over after the fall off. That's how
I'm
I
not
see
sure
it.
if you could get rid of this guy's competitive spirit, though. He's been
know.
competitive since the inception.
Maybe he'll write a book, bro. Like, I think there's so much that he could do outside of music. Like, I just, I do think the fall off will be the epic finale, though, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going on with this. Let's have a more general conversation about the big three and where you see them going. Because when people saw what happened in 2024, I saw Future, I saw Cardi, I saw Tyler. There was so many different names that got thrown into that mix. And if I'm being completely transparent with you, I think it's all garbage. I think it's garbage because it's like looking at a movie trilogy or it's looking at a trio or of anything, right? And it's like, that's the inception. Like, that is what it is. You can't change it. When you go and buy a trio at McDonald's, it's a fry, it's a burger, it's a drink. It's not an apple pie. It's not a McFlurry and a burger.
It's fixed.
It's fixed. This is what it is. That's why the term was coined, and this is why it plays like that. I think there's obviously, conversations to be had about Tyler because he's putting out some of the best records of his fucking life at this point, and he seems to have album of the year contender after album of the year contender. But why don't you give him the title of the best rapper of the 2020s at that point?
You could.
And yeah, but the thing is that people like to fucking troll, and then they like to go back to that old coin. It's like, nah, bro, this guy can't play. You kidding me?
I know.
What's going on? When everyone sees those first week sales on the fall off, they're gonna be like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I should have done that. I'm not sure if I should have made those claims.
But that being said, like, sure, I think the fall off is going to sell extremely well, but I don't even think Cole is pursuing that. But speaking about, like just the future of the big three, I think the conversation is really over in the sense that, I mean, that big three, like you just said, it's solidified in history. It's unbreakable. It is what it is. But in terms of like the actual debate of the big three, I think that conversation's done with. And I'll tell you why. I think that J. Cole and Drake would have too much catching up to do at this point to surpass Kendrick and what he's given hip hop. And I think a big reason for that on J. Cole's front is the fact that he only probably has one major studio album left. And I think even if that's like the sickest masterpiece ever, I still think he's doing catch up with Kendrick and the discography he's left behind. And with Drake, I think he's put out too much weak projects, and I think that there's obviously the ghostwriter conversation that does taint the legacy a little bit, and there's the fact that Kendrick completely eviscerated him in a rap battle. So I think, to me, the way that I'm looking at it, I think the debate is done. I think it's said and done.
Oh yeah, but at the same time, like I said, the term will be coined forever, and I think it's always going to stay like that, just legacy-wise, barbershop talk.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, the conversation itself, when it comes to pure competition, I think Kendrick's in a completely different stratosphere. And but I hold them all to the same value, though, when it comes to my rotation.
For sure.
And like what I enjoy from them. When it comes down to that competitive nature and that competitive talk, I do think Kendrick sees that number one position every single day of the week. But one last question before we get off. Last year was a competitive year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it again?
I think that to the fans and to the internet, Drake and Kendrick Lamar will be competing for the rest of their careers, whether it be chart placements, broken records, their albums that drop in the same year being, pinned up against each other. I think that the fan bases have become so divided that it's going to be a war with no end in sight. So I think they're going to be competing in terms of like barbershop talk and in terms of like online discourse. But I don't think you ever see the round two between them, and I don't think you ever see J. Cole going up against Kendrick or any actual sparring lyrically besides subliminals.
What happened last year was special.
Once in a lifetime.
What happened last year was special. That was an incredible moment. I agree with you when it comes down to the online discourse, when it comes down to the bots, when it comes down to, people trying to get first top comment on NFR posts about album sales, it'll always be a culture. People are always going to be down. People are always going to be down to talk shit. It's going to say, Drake did this, and it's an incredible achievement. And then someone's going to screenshot a Kendrick tweet and be like, but he didn't do it like this. And then it's just the other way around. Then you're going to get Kendrick that does something absolutely incredible. And then someone's going to be like, but views sold like this. I don't know, bro. So I think that banter is always going to be alive in the community. And you know what? If people have nothing to do, after dinner, why not? Have the conversations. about statistics.
No matter how stale it might get, just keep having it. Why the fuck not?
I don't know why
just do it.
but why do you think people get angry at that type of shit? Because I've been seeing a lot of people complaining, oh, there's too much GNX, like Drake talk. Like, this is what you wanted.
Yeah,
Everyone wanted this. Before this whole conversation, I was like, oh, well, it's a bit dead, I don't want it. Then when the sport is finally fucking alive and it's going crazy, oh, but, he doesn't have 15,000 monthly listeners. I don't want to be talking about it. Here's some stuff for your rotation. Thanks, bro. I'm just saying,
wild.
like, I don't know. I think that, like you said, the online discourse will be forever, but last year was last year. Let's advance. Let's have a good year. I hope these guys all drop quality projects, and I'm a fan of all three of them.
And I'll say this. I think that Cole ends up getting back together with both of them and probably, like, make collabs with both of them. I see that happening in the future. I think Drake and Kendrick obviously are going to be sworn enemies, it seems like, for the entirety of their careers. But J. Cole, like, I think he's going to go back into, like, Switzerland territory, which is good.
Imagine you have both Drake and Kendrick on the fall off.
Bro, that would be insane.
That would be crazy, but I'm not sure.
I would love that.
I could just imagine that phone call happening. He's like, who's on the album?
Yeah, no,
and then they find out. And
yeah.
Anyways, guys, it was a great conversation to be had. It's been a while since we've done a recap like this. I feel like ever since 2024, the conversations have been extremely tense, and I think it's time that, like, we move on. And that's another thing I want to see too. It's time to fucking move on. It's good to troll. Yeah. You guys want to have the banter online? Fire, I'm down. But, like, at the same time, it can't come at the expense of, like, looking at the actual music. You wanna fuck to some sexy songs for you? Do it. You want to put on your glasses and read to GNX and go to sleep? Do it.
I don't think you're going to sleep listening to GNX, bro.
No, I'm playing into, like, the stereotypes of both the music.
I know.
I'm just saying, like, don't let those things affect the way that you're listening to the music. Enjoy whatever the fuck you want, and the big three will be forever. That's the way I want to end this off. The big three will be forever. It's never gonna end.
100%. And speaking of the big three, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And we also did a combined discography ranking of all the albums from the big three. We did this last year. You guys could check out the video. It's gonna be linked. It's gonna be linked in the pinned comment. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.